All right, so we're diving into AI today, huh?
Diving right in.
A deep dive into AI. And you've sent me so much interesting stuff, really.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. A lot of cutting edge stuff too, which I always think is fun.
Definitely cutting edge. And from what I can see, a good mix of like the practical stuff and then some bigger picture stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And that's actually what I found so interesting about these sources this time around. It's a real blend of, okay, how does AI work, like practically, but then how's it really going to play out in businesses, industries, you know, even society as a whole?
Right. Like, how is this really going to affect everything? Okay, so maybe we should start with the how then. I feel like I always need a bit of a refresher there before we go too crazy.
Absolutely. Always a good place to start.
Mhm.
And there's actually this training manual from the DIHK, the German Chamber of Commerce. They actually do a good job of explaining how AI is different now, like how it's moved from that traditional programming to this machine learning thing everyone's talking about.
Which is a whole other beast, right?
Right. Instead of hard coding every rule, it's more about giving computers tons and tons of data and letting them basically teach themselves the patterns, kind of like we do, actually.
So instead of telling the computer what to think, we're trying to teach it how to think.
Yeah, exactly. And the DIHK manual uses this very simple example to get the point across. It talks about teaching a computer to tell the difference between, like, apples and oranges.
Okay, I can picture that.
But the thing is, the same principles in that simple example are what's being used in really complex applications. Predicting financial markets, even things like diagnosing diseases.
Wow. Okay, so from apples and oranges to like potentially life or death stuff,
Yeah.
that escalated quickly.
It's all about recognizing patterns in the data. Like, once you teach a system how to do that, the possibilities are huge.
So it's not really about the apples and oranges anymore. And I did see we've got some pretty interesting case studies in this stack of materials, real world examples of how companies are using AI now.
Yeah, we've got Wandel Packaging Group. They're using AI to improve their quality control processes.
Oh yeah, that one caught my eye too.
Imagine being able to spot defects in products, but in real time as they're being made, just by analyzing the data coming off the production line.
That's wild. I mean, it's got to be a game changer for a manufacturing company, right? To be able to catch those problems so early.
Absolutely. And then there was this other one in the Kai manager script, which is specifically designed for managers dealing with AI. They had a whole section about AI and logistics.
Which feels like that would be huge. Logistics impacts pretty much every industry.
It does, and it's being transformed by this. This script talks about how AI can optimize pretty much everything in that world. Warehouse management, demand planning, you name it.
So instead of relying on, historical data, maybe some educated guesses, they can have AI tell them what they're going to need, when, where to put it.
Exactly. It takes out so much of the guesswork and potentially so much of the waste, too.
That's huge for any company dealing with inventory and supply chains and all of that, especially with all the issues we've been seeing in recent years.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just those industries either. Marketing is another area that's changing fast because of AI.
Really? How so?
Imagine being able to figure out, like, how your customers are feeling about your product just by analyzing their online chatter, or being able to tailor your marketing campaigns to exactly what someone is interested in based on their online behavior.
Okay, now to me, that does feel very futuristic. Like, how personalized are we talking here?
It's pretty incredible when you think about it. It's like AI can look at your past purchases, what you're looking at online, even your social media, and get a scarily accurate idea of what you want, what you need, what you might be interested in.
Okay, yeah. That's definitely getting into the territory where I start to feel a little unsure about all this, to be honest.
I get that. It's a lot.
Yeah, like where do we draw the line? But before we go there, you did mention earlier something about AI and older populations. That seems like a complete 180 from what we were just talking about.
It does, doesn't it? That was something that came up in the LearnLen campus materials.
Okay, so what's the connection to AI there?
Well, they were saying how AI is now being used in elder care in some pretty amazing ways.
Okay, like I have to admit, when I hear AI and older people, my mind goes straight to like robot nurses.
Right, like something out of a movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Not necessarily a bad thing, but
It's more interesting than that, actually. It's things like AI giving personalized healthcare recommendations, being used in virtual care assistants that can monitor someone's well-being at home.
okay, that's starting to sound a little less sci-fi and a little more like actually helpful.
Right. And there are even AI systems now that can detect really subtle changes in a person's behavior, even their speech patterns, that might actually indicate a health problem.
Wow, so it's like Almost like having a digital guardian angel. I mean, that's kind of how it sounds.
In a way, yeah.
So we've got AI in factories predicting what we're going to buy before we even know we need it, and now acting as a guardian angel. What can it do at this point?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? We really are just scratching the surface. But with all this potential, obviously, comes a lot of questions. And one of the biggest ones I keep seeing, especially for businesses, is, okay, where do we even begin? Like, how do you build a successful AI strategy when this technology is changing so rapidly?
Yeah, it feels like just as you figure out one thing, there are 10 new developments to consider.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a lot to wrap your head around. But luckily, the KI Manager script does offer some guidance on that front. It has this whole section about how to approach building an AI strategy for your business.
It's a lot to wrap your head around for sure. But luckily, the KI Manager script does offer some guidance on that front. It has this whole section about how to approach building an AI strategy for your business.
It does, and it actually lays out a pretty clear framework, which I think is really needed in all of this.
Okay, so what does their framework look like?
Well, step one, according to them, is define your goals. Like, figure out what you're actually trying to achieve with AI in the first place. Which seems obvious, but I'm sure plenty of companies jump in without really thinking that through.
Right, like what are you actually trying to solve here?
Exactly. Then, because, as we've been saying, AI relies on data, you really had to take a hard look at your data. What data do you have? What data do you need? And do you even have the capability to manage and analyze it all effectively?
Because garbage in, garbage out, right? If you're feeding your AI system bad data, you're not going to get very good results.
Exactly. It's not magic. AI is only as good as the information you feed it. And then the final piece of the puzzle, according to this KI Manager script, is the ecosystem. They say you really need to build a supportive ecosystem to be successful with AI.
So what does that look like? Like who's in this ecosystem?
It could be partnering with AI specialists because, let's face it, most companies don't have that expertise in-house, maybe collaborating with research institutions or even other companies in your industry to share knowledge and best practices. It's about recognizing that most companies will need help to navigate all of this.
Yeah, it's like you need this whole other set of skills and partnerships just to even dip your toes into the AI world.
Yeah, it's a whole new way of thinking about business, really. It reminded me a bit of, remember we were talking about the KI onboarding concept from the LearnLine campus materials?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
They were talking about it in terms of like, how do you integrate AI into your existing workforce without freaking everyone out? But the more we talk about this strategy piece, the more I think that KI onboarding idea applies to entire companies, not just employees.
It's like you're not just onboarding new technology, you're onboarding a whole new way of working, a whole new way of thinking.
Right. It's a process of adaptation and learning for everyone involved. And speaking of adapting and learning, for all this talk about strategy and implementation and all of the practical stuff, there's another aspect of this whole AI thing that I find myself thinking about a lot. And it's not really about the technology itself.
Okay, what's on your mind?
It's the human side of it all. Like, what does all this mean for us, for our jobs, for, like, society in general?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? And I think it's one that a lot of people are feeling anxious about. Understandably so. Like, we hear all these stories about AI replacing jobs, and it's hard not to feel a little uneasy.
Of course. But the interesting thing is, a lot of the experts in these materials seem to agree that AI won't necessarily replace jobs entirely, so much as transform them. It's more about humans and AI figuring out how to work together, each playing to their strengths.
So less about robots taking over and more about humans and AI becoming, like, co-workers. I can get behind that.
Right. It's a more optimistic way of looking at it. But I think it's important to be realistic, too. Even if AI doesn't completely replace humans in the workplace, which I think is an open question, it will definitely change things. Like, we're going to need different skills. We'll have to be much more comfortable with change and adapting to new technologies.
And who even knows what new jobs AI will create? Like jobs that we can't even imagine right now because this technology doesn't even exist yet.
Exactly. That's why this whole thing about lifelong learning, being adaptable, it's not just some buzzword. It's going to be essential in this new world we're moving into.
Adaptability, that's a good word for it. It does feel like things are moving so fast with AI that it's not even enough to learn new things. You have to constantly be relearning them.
100%. What's in demand today might be obsolete tomorrow, which is, a bit overwhelming when you think about it. But it's also why I think it's so important to have these conversations now, to really be thoughtful and proactive about how we approach this whole AI thing. And not just from a technological standpoint, but from a human one too.
It is a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of why I find this whole AI thing so fascinating. It's forcing us to really examine not just what we're capable of doing with technology, but what we should be doing with it.
100%. And these sources don't shy away from those bigger questions either. Like, we've been talking about the future of work and the skills we'll need, but it goes so much deeper than that, you know?
Yeah, for sure. It's like this isn't just some tech industry thing anymore. It really feels like AI is about to touch every aspect of our lives.
Exactly. And one of the things that the KI Manager script brings up, which I think is so important, is data privacy.
Oh, right. Because if we're talking about AI systems that are basically built on data,
Yeah, and learning from it constantly.
then we have to know, are we using that data responsibly, ethically? Especially with things like GDPR, those regulations are in place for a reason.
And this is another area where it feels like the technology is there, but the rules, the guidelines, we're still figuring that part out as we go.
It feels like with every deep dive we do, we end up with more questions than answers. Which I guess is good. It means we're thinking critically.
That's the point, right? And the more we talk about AI, the more I realize this isn't really just a technology issue, it's a human one.
100%. We're talking about ethics, about privacy, about the potential for AI to be used in ways that maybe we haven't even thought of yet, good or bad.
And that, I think, is what makes it so crucial that we're having these conversations now, that we're thinking about the ethical implications, the potential consequences, before things move too far along.
So that we can hopefully steer this whole AI thing in a direction that benefits everyone.
Exactly. It's not enough to simply develop AI that works. It has to work for humanity.
Which brings us back to that idea of humans and AI working together, not against each other.
And that collaboration, that partnership, it all starts with understanding. The more we understand about AI, how it works, the better equipped we'll be to actually use it responsibly, to shape its development, and hopefully to reap the benefits without falling into all the potential pitfalls.
I like how you put that. It really is about understanding. It's not about being afraid of AI, and it's not about blindly embracing it either. It's about informed curiosity, maybe.
I like that. Informed curiosity. I think that's a great way to put it.
Well, this has been a really, really interesting deep dive. As always, I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
I know, right? There's always more to explore.
But if you had to pick one thing, what would you say is the most important takeaway for our listeners from all of this?
Don't be afraid to ask questions about AI, about its implications, about how it's being used. The more we ask, the more we learn, the better prepared we'll all be for whatever comes next.
I love that. Ask questions, stay curious. That's good advice for pretty much anything in life, but especially with something as complex and fast-moving as AI. I think you're right on the money.
I'm glad we could, add some fuel to that fire today.
Me too. And for everyone listening, thank you for, well, lending us your ears for this deep dive. It's been a really fascinating conversation, and we hope you'll keep exploring these topics with us as we continue to learn and adapt right alongside this AI revolution that's happening all around us.
It's an exciting time to be paying attention, that's for sure.
It is. And with that, we'll leave you with this thought. If AI is already transforming everything from factories to healthcare, what other unexpected applications might be just around the corner? And what impact will they have on our world? Until next time, keep learning, keep asking questions, and as always, keep exploring.